It is 11:45 p.m. on a humid Tuesday in Troy, Michigan, inside a modest, three-bedroom ranch that looks like every other house on the block. 64-year-old Marcus is sitting at his kitchen table. The only light comes from the blue-white glow of his laptop screen. His breathing is shallow. His hands, callous from 40 years of honest labor, are hovering over the keyboard as if it's a live wire. Marcus just finished running the numbers for the 10th time tonight. And for the 10th time, the math came back with the same devastating answer. Marcus did everything the system told him to do. He went to college, he climbed the corporate ladder in logistics, and he never missed a 401k contribution. On paper, Marcus is a success. His account balance shows $1.2 million. 10 years ago, that number would have felt like a king's ransom. But it is 2026. And tonight, Marcus realized that his $1.2 million is actually a ticking time bomb. Between the 2026 property tax hikes in Michigan, the skyrocketing cost of private Medicare supplements, and the fact that a simple bag of groceries now costs twice what it did in 2020, Marcus is looking at a total depletion of his life savings in less than 9 years. He is not alone. Marcus is the face of a silent, nationwide catastrophe. He is a victim of the Great Retirement Lie, a multi-generational deception that has convinced the American middle class that they can gamble their way to a dignified old age using a system that was never designed to support them. The lie began in 1978, but it didn't feel like a lie back then. Before the late 70s, if you worked for a major American company, you had a pension. You had a defined benefit. You did your time, and the company took the risk of making sure you didn't starve when you were 70. But then a quiet change to the Internal Revenue Code, Section 401k, changed the world. It was originally intended as a tax dodge for wealthy executives, but Wall Street saw a golden opportunity. They realized they could convince corporations to kill off pensions and shift the entire burden of financial survival onto the shoulders of the individual worker. They sold it as freedom. They told us we were the masters of our own destiny. They gave us colorful pie charts and told us that if we just stayed the course and invested for the long term, the magic of compound interest would set us free. But they forgot to mention one thing. The math only works if the world stays the same. And in 2026, the world is unrecognizable. Think back 30 years ago to 1996. The median home price in America was around $120,000. A gallon of gas was $1.22. Today, in 2026, the median home price has surged past $520,000. Interest rates on everything from car loans to credit cards have remained stubbornly high as the government struggles to contain the ghost of 2024's inflation. The rule of 4%, the holy grail of retirement planning that says you can safely withdraw 4% of your savings every year, has been shredded by the reality of 2026. If Marcus takes out 4% of his $1 million, he gets $40,000 a year. After taxes and the 2026 cost of insurance, he's living below the poverty line in a house he supposedly owns. The betrayal goes deeper. While Marcus was diligently putting 15% of his paycheck into his 401k, the system was quietly extracting its pound of flesh. Hidden fees, expense ratios, and management costs have been eating away at his future for decades. A 1% fee sounds small, but over 40 years, it can swallow up to 1/3 of a worker's total retirement nest egg. The house always wins, and in this game, Wall Street is the house. Let's look at Savannah, Georgia. Meet Sarah. She's 68. She spent 35 years teaching elementary school. She thought she was safe. But Sarah's story represents the retirement shadow class. Because her pension was frozen years ago and her small 401k was ravaged by the market volatility of the early 2020s, Sarah now spends her Saturday mornings delivering groceries for an app. She's not doing it for extra pocket money. She's doing it because her 2026 rent increased by another 15% this year, and her Social Security check, which was supposed to be a safety net, has become a joke in the face of real-world inflation. The invisible enemy isn't just a lack of savings. It's the systematic destruction of purchasing power. The dollars Marcus saved in 2005 were powerful. The dollars he's being paid back in 2026 are weak. We were told to save numbers, but we have to live on value. And the value has been engineered to evaporate. This is the nuclear reveal. The American retirement system wasn't designed to make you wealthy. It was designed to provide a massive, consistent flow of capital into the stock market to keep asset prices high for the ultra-wealthy. You were never the customer. You were the liquidity. Your 401k is the fuel that keeps the machine running. And once you've served your purpose of providing that capital for 40 years, the machine has no further use for you. The psychological toll is where the real damage happens. For someone like Marcus, the realization that he might be broke at 75 isn't just a financial problem. It's an identity collapse. He did everything right. He played by the rules. He was a good American. And yet, he finds himself staring at a screen in the middle of the night, wondering if he'll have to sell his family home just to afford knee replacement. The nostalgia of the gold watch era feels like a fairy tale now. In 1990, a middle-class salary was roughly 3 times the cost of a home. In 2026, it is nearly 10 times. The ladder has been pulled up, and the people currently standing on the roof, the retirees of today, are realizing the roof is on fire. We are entering the era of the work-until-you-die economy. It's a world where the concept of a work-free final chapter is becoming a luxury reserved for the top 1%. For everyone else, the 2026 reality is a choice between 2 evils. Keep working until your body fails, or move into a multi-generational housing situation that most Americans haven't seen since the Great Depression. But there's a deeper, more sinister layer to this lie. It's the healthcare trap. In 2026, the average American couple retiring at 65 is estimated to need nearly $480,000 just to cover healthcare costs that Medicare doesn't touch. That is half of Marcus's entire life savings, gone before he even buys a single loaf of bread or pays a single utility bill. The system counts on you being too tired and too scared to fight back. It counts on you blaming yourself. I should have saved more, Marcus whispers to himself in the dark. I should have picked better stocks. No, Marcus, you couldn't have outsaved a system that is designed to devalue your labor while inflating the assets you don't own. The emotional wave of this realization is hitting millions of households this very second. It starts as a quiet anxiety when you see the price of eggs. It turns into a dull ache when you realize you can't afford to visit your grandkids because the flights are too expensive. And it ends in a cold panic at 11:45 p.m. in Troy, Michigan, when you realize the math of your life no longer adds up. The truth is brutal, but it's necessary. The retirement you were promised is dead. It was buried under decades of corporate greed, monetary debasement, and a fundamental shift in how our society values human life versus capital. The 401k was a failed experiment for the worker, but a massive success for the institutions. As the clock on Marcus's wall ticks toward midnight, he closes his laptop. The screen goes black, reflecting his tired, worried face. He has 24 months of liquidity before he has to make a choice he never thought he'd have to make. He represents the end of an era. The dream is over. The paycheck got bigger over the years, but the life behind it? The life behind it got smaller. We were told that if we reached the finish line with $1 million, we would be safe. But the finish line was moved. The rules were changed while we were running the race. And now, As the first generation of the 401k experiment reaches the end, we are finally seeing the lie for what it is. The golden years aren't golden. They are a struggle for survival in a country that has forgotten how to take care of its own. Marcus stands up, his knees cracking in the silence of the kitchen. He walks to the window and looks out at the quiet street. He wonders how many of his neighbors are sitting in the dark, just like him, staring at the same terrifying numbers. The American dream didn't die. It was sold to the highest bidder, and you weren't invited to the auction. The paycheck got bigger. The life behind it got smaller. Disclaimer: this is not financial advice. The strategies discussed in this documentary are for educational and entertainment purposes only. Investing involves risk, including the loss of principal. Always consult with a qualified financial advisor or tax professional before making significant investment decisions.